Welcome to Bungalows for Bachelors number 4. Today we are going to talk about detailing. Detailing is referring to literally detailed drawing and the kind of stuff that you would see on construction documents that shows blow-ups of things and some details and stuff like that. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into the presentation. I'm going to pull that up right now, and we will get started here. Come on. There we go. Okay. So Phase one, pre-construction, we are still in, and today we are going to talk about detailing. So, what is a detail, you might ask yourself? A detail, as indicated by this red box on this plan, is a blow up of some kind of important structural feature or some kind, it doesn't have to be structural, it can be a different kind of thing. But it's basically a blown up way to describe something important on a construction document of some kind. So, we're going to open this up. This is a structural design for that three-story house that I talked about last time. So I'll make sure that people are still looking at it here. Let me switch it over. Share. Okay, so this is the roof plan. It's the structural plan of that three-story house that I had done before. We're going to go ahead and go down to the ceiling plan. Down. Okay, so there's all kinds of call outs, which are these arrows and text that point to things. Some of them are going to ask for a detail. They're going to describe a detail. So a lot of times in a plan view like this, you can't draw everything on this first sheet. So you got to start referencing other sheets and stuff like that. So this was the sheet that was on that first page with the red box around it. It's saying, oh, okay, for figure A, that is just the name of this drawing, this sketch. It's describing how this one particular feature is going to be built, what pieces are shown here, what the rules are, and what you're going to use to nail this piece of wood onto this piece of wood, basically. So it's just a specific way of describing how this connection and thing is going to be built. So figure A is actually referred to right here. So this dashed line next to this window is referring to the header that's supposed to be over this window. The header is going to be the horizontal wood object that's going to hold any weight above it. It's going to spread that weight out to the studs around the window so the window doesn't end up getting any load of any kind. So the actual glass window itself, you want to make a hole in the wall. So it just says, see figure A, this sheet. You would look at this sheet and you would find figure A, and oh, look, that's how we're supposed to build that one particular thing. And you have to adapt it, of course, to whatever the size of the window is and all that stuff. But that's how that works. There's another one over here. Let's see. The way they did all these first and second floor headers was supposed to be this detail called a rim board header, where the horizontal member holding up the weight above the window is actually pushed up into the floor system. It's not inside the wall itself like a regular header would be. And we're going to go look at that detail in a second. It says see figure D on the details one sheet. So I got to find the details one sheet. I happen to know that it's going to be this one second from the end. It's not labeled. It's in the title block, but it's all whited out. So I need to find figure D. I went too far. Figure D. Here we go. So figure D, rim board header detail. So this is going to describe how this thing is supposed to be built. So what's special about this is that the header that normally, I can't find one, there's not one in here. The header that's normally over the window, which is this horizontal board here, is normally like 2x6s or 2x8s or 2x10s or something, maybe three stacked up vertically and nailed together. That puts a lot of wood in the wall. So this is a special detail that says, here's how you can support the weight of the floor and spread the weight out over the opening without having to put that wood in the wall. And it makes the wall a little more efficient. So this is just an example of a detail. In this case, it's a structural detail describing how to sufficiently carry loads. And it has description of the rules on how far the board needs to extend, um, the lengths of the bearing. These joists need to sit in the hangers a certain amount. So it just describes lots of stuff in the detail. So that is what a detail is. So we'll go back over to our presentation. So yeah, that's what you see. Details are used all the time for literally adding detailed information to a construction plan. So, what types of details exist? Well, the first kind that we just looked at a bunch was structural details. These details are almost always concerned with how you are going to specifically connect one thing to another thing. Sometimes it shows how many boards are there, or how many nails are there, or the spacing, or the size of this, or the size of that. It's going to describe a lot of like structural weight transfer situations. That's the purpose of the structural details. This PDF that I'm going to open up here that I will share is an example of a particular brand. To the screen. Okay, a particular brand, Weyerhaeuser's truss joist, whatever you want to call it. They make a wooden eye joist called a TJI. That's their brand. And these are extremely common. And so, because these are special pieces of wood, we can't, as an engineer or someone designing a house, we can't say that these carry like a 12-inch tall TJI may or may not carry the same weight as a 2x10 lumber piece of wood, depending on what species it is. So they do all their own math, they do all their own testing, they find out all the details on their particular product, and they write this manual on how to use these, how to design with these, how to install these. So as an example, we're going to look in here for some details that they would describe. And I'll talk about this PDF at the end. But basically, they're just going to see tons and tons of details on just how they're supposed to be done. For example, to properly seat each joist in a metal hanger, you want a dab of subfloor adhesive in the seat of the hanger at the bottom, and then you want to bend this tab down to fasten this eye joist down to the hanger. So this is a detail showing a specific connection. Sometimes there's section views, sometimes they're 3D views. Here's a super big 3D view, not quite really a detail. This is your tables describing how they can be used, how far they can span, what loads they can take. This is all engineering or design stuff. Let's get into more details here. All right, so here's a detail that's breaking out a whole bunch of ways these are supposed to be supported when they're installed. You're just going to get a zoomed in view of things. You're going to see specific examples of special things, and they're going to describe important information about specific details. So here's a hole. They have a note describing how big of a hole you can make, how you're supposed to cut the hole. So everything about this particular product is described in here, and there's tons of details to describe how it's all supposed to go together. So that's pretty much it. It's pretty much the same thing. So we'll go ahead and head back over to our presentation. But those are structural details on how that wood is supposed to be structurally secure. There are other types of details that are just generally related to construction called, one group would be water management details. These details, and it's not linking correctly, so I'm going to have to open this up manually real quick. These details are more about, let me see if I can just do this. Oops. These details are more about how to properly keep water out of your house. You want to always shed water in a wall assembly towards the outside. You're trying to keep everything dry. There's very important water details that are for roof building, just to make sure, because roof's going to get a whole lot of wind and rain-driven wind and things like that. I'm going to have to pause this screen share for a second and go open up the other detail here. Actually, we're just going to, let me just do that real quick. Give me just a second. I'm going to send you back to this. And then I'm going to open up the water detail. Okay, and then I'll share my screen again. Okay, so this is that blown up water detail. Loading up here real quick. So this is describing when you're stacking bricks on a brick ledge, a concrete ledge for a house, and you want to keep the water out of the house. This is saying when you stack the bricks, make sure that you put this particular waterproofing membrane on top of the concrete, and the waterproofing membrane goes, this is a section view, it goes up underneath the bricks, and then it will run up the wall, and then the waterproofing membrane that's on the wall is going to overlap over top of that one, and shed all the water out off the house. There's going to be holes in the bottom of the brick to let the water out of that. So this is an example of a water management detail describing a proper way to connect certain water managing features. So we'll go back and continue here. So another type of detail would be a wall or roof assembly detail. This is a very common detail that's going to end up on most architectural plans. This is going to be the opportunity for people to, it's not linking up as well, so I'm going to have to fix that. This is going to provide an opportunity for people to describe, like a homeowner is going to put in here maybe the type of insulation they want in their wall, and then the type of insulation they want in their attic, or stuff like that. So let's go ahead and swap the screen share to here. So this is what it would look like once it loads up. This is just a particular example. This is a fairly complicated wall assembly. They have some rigid insulation boards on the outside of their wall assembly. So it's kind of complicated, but this is the basic idea. You're going to see usually this first layer on the inside. There's your 1/2 inch of drywall. And then you're going to see this the squiggly looking stuff. That's your stud bay. That is where the insulation exists. And then outside that is your sheathing board, that wood sheathing of some kind that's going to go outside on the studs. And these two big thick layers, those are going to be, in this case, there's some rigid insulation. In this case, it says 2 layers of 2-inch mineral wool or fiberglass. And then they didn't describe, they did fire retardant treated furring boards. So they're trying to gap the cladding on the outside of the building off of that insulation. So that's how they're going to do that in this case. But this is a wall or roof assembly. It oftentimes will describe how the eave of the building is supposed to be created, where the block goes, where the trim goes, what sizes the trims are going to be used in this particular case, where all this stuff trims out. There's a lot of important information that can describe different complexities here in a wall and roof assembly. And in this case, the rafters, the roof is all insulated. But sometimes you would see an empty attic space above this, and the insulation would just be sitting on the ceiling. That's a more common thing. But this is a wall and roof assembly example. We'll go ahead and go back here. So another type of detail that you might see, and would likely see actually, is a stairway detail. Now, a stairway detail is important in an architectural plan because oftentimes people who are reviewing plans people who are reviewing permits and things like that need to prove that the stairway is going to be up to code. It's going to have a proper rise and run and things like that. And let me pull up the stairway screen share so you can see what I'm looking at. And it's going to prove there's no headroom problems. It's just a general way of describing to the construction guys, hey, this is what was intended. This math ended up making the stairway this shape and this size to fit in this space. So when the carpenter is cutting out the treads, and not the treads, it was cutting out the stringers that are the boards that are going to make the shape of the stairway, he's going to know what math to use. Oftentimes they might adjust and use their math on the spot anyway, because they want to fit it to what's been built. But this is a basic idea. In this 3-story house, there were 2 stairwells, and these were the 2 sections that described it. One of them had a rise of 7.5 and a run of 11 5/8. The other stairway was a run of exactly 12 inches and a rise of 7 9/16. So these are just ways to show what's going on here. And this was a very, very tall clearance between this step and what's above here. So there was no need to show a label of height or anything. There was very, very clearly enough room. So that's what stairway details can share. So we will go on back and discuss the other type of detail that's frequently going to show up on an architectural plan. And that would be a cabinetry detail. So cabinetry detailing is going to be a place where lots of homeowners get to be very specific about what kind of cabinets they want to see in their house. Do I want pull open drawers? Do I want swing open drawers? Do I want a knob here? Do I want a handle here? Do I want no hardware? What do I want? So oftentimes this is where all of that detail is going to happen. So that ends up usually on my at least roof and details sheet. And these are examples of the cabinetry details for this particular house. It's going to describe the kitchen island, the kitchen rear wall. We're telling them how wide these cabinet sections are. They're pretty standard sizes, so cabinet makers know in general what to order and what's going to fit in here. Um, Kitchen left wall, so things get a little more complicated. On this wall, there's a oven. There's a specific soffit built above the ventilation hood. They wanted some shelves, um, and they specifically wanted a pot filler behind on the wall behind the oven. So this is just where you'd start adding detail for like specific stuff in the kitchens, bathrooms, stuff like that. Um, and that is generally what cabinetry details are going to describe. Occasionally they'll have more information. Occasionally they'll have less information. It depends on how much the person doing the plans or the client wants to put on the plan, how much they want to leave for later when they're just going to go ahead and talk all of this information. They're just going to discuss all this information with the builder or the cabinetry guy at the end of the day anyway. So not really a huge point in putting it on a plan. It just depends. So moving on, those are the basic types of details. There could be lots of other types of details too, but those are just some examples that you're going to show. Um, what tools are used to create these details? Well, it sort of depends on who's doing it. So some people will draw it on pen and paper. Some people will draft it in AutoCAD very plainly with lines. You have a lot of control when you're doing that, so it's a good place to do it. And sometimes I will do it out of Chief Architect because a lot of modern architectural softwares give you a lot of control over how to define your model when you're creating all of these things. So it becomes a lot easier to make sure this is opening up. Becomes a lot easier to get a detail drawn when the detail is already drawn in a software. You just have to know how to get that information out. So in this case, what I want to do, I'm on the second floor, go down to the first floor. In this case, if I wanted to do let's say, a wall and roof detail, I'm going to pick a spot that's just got a plain old wall and a roof. If I go look outside of this house, I'm going to show you that I am going to be focusing simply right here on this little spot in between these two windows on this first wall. So I'm going to cut it right there just so I get a piece of wall and I get a piece of roof. It doesn't have to be anywhere specific. I just happen to know that's where I want to show it. So what I'm going to do is I can use a special tool in here to just go in and create a cross-section view and cut it. What that's going to do is it's going to cut everything exactly where I said. And in fact, that was the wrong type. I don't want to create that type. I want to create a slightly different type. So let me do this. I don't want as much information behind me. There we go. So what I've just done is I've extracted those lines and all that work into a predefined shape. There's some stuff not showing in here because I have settings turned off, but you can turn things on and off and see more, see less. But you can use tools like this to get a bunch of pre-drawn shapes that are already correct based on what's been put in this software. So that's just an example of how you can use a modern architectural software to speed up the process of drafting. You don't have to draw everything by hand. So that can be done. What tools can anybody use? Well, anybody can get a free trial of AutoCAD. I think they'll give you a month. And Chief Architect, I believe they will let you run the program, but you can't save any files or print anything out as a free trial. So you're very limited in that regard, but it does allow you to play with it. And of course, if you want to draw details for something you're trying to build, the basic way it happens and the way it happens frequently on time or in an office, or not on time, on a site or in an office, is just a pencil and paper. So two people are trying to discuss something about what's going to get built. They're just going to start drawing it out. It can happen literally a pencil on a piece of wood. It can happen anywhere. So that's pretty much how details are drawn, what details are. And if you want to learn more about details, then you should glance to the 2021 International Residential Code book. And there are tons and tons of details in that book that discuss and show how all of these things are supposed to be built. It's a general guide to home construction. It's not going to answer all of the questions, but it will have a lot of information. If you just want to see more details, that's a great place. And then, of course, excuse me, you can read through the TJI specifiers guide. That's the PDF I was just showing you in the beginning with those wooden eye joists on it. That is a free PDF online. They make it available so anybody can learn about it and buy their product. So that's a great source to go to if you want to see more details, see more, go read the information on, oh, when I'm putting this on here, I'm supposed to connect this to this, and you get to understand the real purpose behind the details and all that stuff. So that's the extended understanding. And that is going to be it. That is the summary of all of the details. So thank you for watching.